Hello, welcome inside a special live edition of IndyStar Preps Weekly. My name is Brian Haenchen. That's Kyle Neddenriep, and the man, the myth, the master picker, Akeem Glaspie, sitting in the middle. How you boys doing?
Good, good. This should be fun. We'll break it all down here and take a look. It's always it gets real when the sectional draw comes out. So looking forward to talking about it.
Akeem, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Yeah, it's finally that time. We're so close to the postseason, and we finally get to see some matchups here and talk about them a little bit. So I'm excited.
This show is live, so if you want to get involved with the conversation, you can do so through the IndyStar Facebook and YouTube pages. We have both of those pulled up here, so we'll be monitoring comments. And then for all the brackets and all the coverage that you can imagine from Kyle and company, you can find all that on IndyStar.com. Kyle, let's just start off broadly. Speaking broadly, did anything jump out to you immediately? Any surprises with the draw?
Yeah, well, I think what I noticed the most probably was that the matchups came out to where it's almost kind of like you seeded them, and I think that's probably the ideal situation. I know everybody's looking forward to Roncalli and CHATARD, see where they lined up in Class 4A Sectional 22. They turned out to be on the opposite sides of the bracket. You look at Westfield and HSE, for instance, in Sectional 4 and 6A, also on the opposite sides of the bracket. Carmel and Brownsburg, and we can break all these down a little bit closer as we go through them, but it seemed like for the most part, and there are some exceptions to that rule, as we'll talk about here as we break down the brackets. But for the most part, I thought they came out where you're going to end up with probably barring some upsets, which are always fun, but you're going to end up with the best teams playing each other most likely in the sectional championship game, which I think is probably a good thing.
Let's start diving into those brackets more specifically. We'll start in 6A with Sectional 8. That's where Center Grove resides. Center Grove has won 10 consecutive sectional titles coming into this season. Kyle, we'll start with you. You see the matchup there, them against against Franklin Central to start things off. Columbus North draws the bye in that region.
Yeah, I know we had a question, I think, on one of our social media platforms about why this is a three-team bracket, and it's because the IHSAA last year froze the enrollments. Because of the COVID year, so they ended up with three teams. They had a team bumped down to 5A, and so this is kind of an odd year where you have one three-team sectional in Class 6A. But yeah, Center Grove, this is their route. This is how they will go about things, and have a big game this week with Cathedral, and then they'll jump into preparation for Franklin Central, and an old familiar face, Jason West, coaching Franklin Central, once coached under Eric Moore, so they know each other well, have battled when West was at Warren Central, but a tall task. I'm sure Jason would definitely agree to that. And Columbus North there on the other side of the bracket. Like you said, Brian, Center Grove has won 10 sectional championships in a row. They would be definitely the odds-on favorite to keep that streak going. But an interesting game nonetheless, playing Franklin Central, a team I know, Akeem, we've talked about on the shows all season that has been on the come-up this year.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I spoke to Cathedral on Friday, and I talked about how did you guys focus on this week and not look forward to the Center Grove game, and I'm curious to see maybe if there's a hangover the following week, like you get so geared up to play Cathedral. I wonder how it will kind of bleed into the following week for Center Grove. So yeah, that's an interesting matchup there.
Does that bye week, Kyle, does that help or hurt teams traditionally?
I think it helps, and they went to the 6-team bracket, and it's been there's some different ideas on what they should do. Should everybody have the opening week, or should they have a week at the end where, because the number of teams are different, there's half the teams in 6A and 5A. But as we'll see later, some of those 5A teams do have to play in to the bracket basically. But I think it's a good thing. You kind of get a rest up. We have a game like the Center Grove Cathedral game this week. You can now kind of play as it's a normal game, whereas maybe if you played the next week, you would have to maybe rest some of your guys, and maybe it's not as becomes less important, I guess. But when you have a 2-week break, I mean, you can, I think, probably throw everything into that game, and I think it should be a great game Friday.
Kyle or Akeem is somebody who played high school football relatively recently. Do you like the bye weeks in between?
Well, my team never played in the postseason, so we didn't really have a lot of extra time off. And then I guess by the end of the season, we were so bad that we were probably looking forward to just getting it over with. So yeah, I'm not a great example, but I mean, like I said, these are high school kids. They're human beings. I would imagine they're used to the routine and kind of the repetitiveness and the structure of the the week by week kind of routine there. So yeah, any type of variable, any type of change is adding a different variable to the postseason. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
Just like a big-time hockey game, you just got to get that first big hit out of the way to get the juices flowing. I had to put Akeem on the spot and completely whiff just to get the juices flowing. These are the things that you don't see because Clark is the mastermind at editing these things out. Let's shift over to Sectional 7 there in 6A. You have North Central at Lawrence North, Warren Central at Lawrence Central.
Yeah, this is maybe one of the more balanced groupings, I would say, and I think the matchup everybody would maybe expect Lawrence North and Warren playing each other in the championship game. I covered that game actually a couple weeks ago, and LN came back and won that game 24-21, and that was a really good game, very competitive. Lawrence North, this is their first time 2 winning seasons back to back in about 15 years. So they're stringing together some good seasons now. I would probably give Warren probably the slight nod there as the favorite in that field. North Central having a tough year this year, just picked up their first win on Friday. And then Lawrence Central has been a team that has been on the come up this year too, and they could be a potential sleeper in that bracket. But I think that'll be probably Warren and Lawrence North playing each other in the championship game.
Yeah, and I know we have Fishers and HSC playing in an opening round, but do you think Lawrence North is maybe doing a sigh of relief that they don't have to play Central in the first round? How do you think that would have factored in?
Yeah, I mean that's always a great matchup, and a lot of people who know each other on both sides of that
definitely.
Lawrence Township game. So, I think there probably is some of that. You don't necessarily want to play your rival, especially someone you beat earlier in the season again right away. So if you can avoid that, probably for the better for Lawrence North. But I would say that's going to be that'll be really. I know, Brian, you covered Warren Central this week. They had a tough, or Warren Central against Carmel, and they had a tough game. At times their offense has been really dynamic, and at times it hasn't been. But just it's kind of an up and down season in Mike Kirshner's first year there. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see which team comes out or how long it takes them to get going. And we'll talk about this more on Wednesday. But it just took them a little bit of time to get going there against Carmel, and by then the Greyhounds had a pretty healthy lead there. Let's shift over to Sectional 6 there up in 6A. That one involves Southport, Ben Davis, Perry Meridian, and Arsenal.
Yeah, this is kind of the Ben Davis Invitational, I would say. They're only 3-5, but as we know, they've lost to a lot of good teams, a lot of close games that they've lost. So that record not really indicative of how talented they are. Southport's struggling with a winless season this year, and then Tech. Kind of a revival for Tech and Perry Meridian really this year, both having better seasons than they've had in recent years. And I think Tech under Craig Chambers starting to build a program there and get the youth program going, but still a long way to go to catch up to Ben Davis. I fully expect the Giants to be playing in the regional.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to see Ben Davis putting maybe 4 good quarters together and kind of, progressing a little bit more. They've had a little bit of an up and down season, but yeah, I mean, that's a kind of a fortunate draw for them, and should be able to advance.
Again, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so on the our IndyStar Facebook page. Head over there. We've tweeted out the link for you to get involved there. If you have any questions, you can also tweet them at any of the 3 of us or at the Indy High School Sports account, and we'll get to those questions as the show progresses. Sectional 5, this one's interesting. Carmel at Avon, Brownsburg at Pike. Is there any reason, Kyle, that you think that we won't get a potential Carmel-Brownsburg meeting in the championship game?
Kershawn McRae, maybe. I mean, that may be the one guy standing in the way of Carmel. But I don't know. He's as good as he's been. Carmel. I think, Brian, you wrote about it a little bit. I think they're maybe the team that, if you're looking at a number 2 team in 6A, they might be the team that could beat Center Grove potentially. Now they didn't have Zach Osborne when they played against Center Grove. And maybe that doesn't make up 27 points they got beat by, but at least gives you a fighting chance, I think. And, Carmel's a team that, I think is well-rounded defensively, has good offensive skill position guys. Their receivers, I think, are underrated a little bit. They have weapons out there for Zach Osborne to throw to in King and Duffy. So, I think it's a good group there. And they beat Brownsburg last year in the sectional championship. Probably not one of Brownsburg really struggled offensively in that game, and I think they'll have a better go of it if they do match up again. But I think that could be Brownsburg Carmel could be maybe the best game in 6A when you're looking at potential championship games.
Akeem, we were talking briefly beforehand. What did you make of this group?
Yeah, I mean, like Kyle was saying, but Brownsburg, as a former lineman, I guess I love getting running games going, and Brownsburg has great running backs, 2 great running backs, in Cheryl and Caleb Marcus. So, yeah, I think the matchup moving forward in the championship game, it's going to be interesting to see what quarterback you get in terms of Osborne and what he can do. And then, again, a running game, you can slow it down, you can limit the possessions, and when you can do that, that always gives you a chance to be in the game. So yeah, Brownsburg is very interesting moving forward.
Sectional 4, Kyle, you described it as fun. Westfield, Noblesville, Fishers, Hamilton, Southeastern. What do you like about this this group?
Well, a Noblesville fan I know texted me and said it doesn't look like much fun. So maybe that's a wrong way to put it. But at the bottom of that bracket, you see there Fishers and HSE, the Mudsock game. They'll have a revival of that. Should be a great crowd again for that game. HSE won the first time they played each other, and I think really is probably 7-1. They've been better, I think, than most people thought they would be this year, and a lot of that is their line play is excellent. But they did this game I covered earlier this year is actually Westfield won that game, and that's only loss this year for the Royals. And I was real impressed that Maximus Webster and Hauser and they got all their skill position guys really going that game, I thought, and Webster was about as good as I've seen him in that game. Just really didn't miss anything, and HSE played him really well defensively, but just too much offense in that one. So that could be I think could be a really good game in the sectional championship. And I think if you look at it, probably I would give Westfield a slight edge as far as the top team in the entire north side of that bracket. Merrillville is maybe the other one that you look at, and there's not really any common opponents to test them, but you look at Merrillville's players and their D1 talent that they have, and I think they're legit coming out of that area of the state. So, those two teams could meet up. It could be an HSE Merrillville or Westfield Merrillville potentially down the road, and I think those would be really interesting games. But yeah, I would give Westfield probably a slight advantage. But that looks like it could be a fun sectional this year.
If nothing else, I mean, the first round matchup, the rivalry reborn there with Fishers and HSE will be a lot of fun. Akeem, do you have any thoughts on that group?
No, Kyle pretty much nailed it. But again, like you said, a rivalry game. I'd love to be in there and kind of experience that atmosphere. I would imagine it'd be even more amplified. With everything on the line, that should be fun.
Yeah, the regular season matchup from the video that Clark shot. I mean, it looked insane then. I can't imagine what it'll be like with playoff atmosphere.
Yeah, I think Clark got some TikTok views out of that. So that crowd was insane. That was a good. That's what high school football that I think we missed, and that's maybe something we should talk about too. Was the crowd that we missed out on last year? They're just even some of the biggest games you just didn't have the crowds like they have been this year, and you don't forget. It's hard to forget about that, but you kind of take it for granted, I guess, when it comes back. And it feels like it's kind of back to normal now.
It really is. It's amazing. Like it hits you just how much you missed it and how much, like you said, you take it for granted, that sort of thing. Yeah. Before we move on to the lower classes, Kyle, any other teams that you look as potential outside of the area as potential contenders or ones that could upset the apple cart other than, or is Maryville the main one?
I think Merrillville's probably the team. I think, a lot of people in that part of the state, and I agree, I think they're a team that, when you have Division I guys, I mean, it's hard not to notice what they're doing up there, and they've just been smashing everybody in their path. So I think they're legit. It's better for the state, I think, when 6A does have somebody outside Central Indiana who can make a run, and I think it raises the overall interest level too. But that's the team I would say. I don't know if there's anybody else in the southern half of the bracket. They're all Central Indiana teams for the most part. In there anyway, but you got the monster Center Grove, and then everybody chasing them is kind of the way I see it in 6A.
Yeah, absolutely. As we give Kyle and Akeem a chance to breathe, a reminder that you can check out all the brackets from all over the state, all across the state on IndyStar.com, and then during the show here, if you want to get involved with the conversation, you can do so on the IndyStar Facebook page at facebook.com/IndyStar. Gentlemen, as we move down to 5A, let's start off with sectional 14. That section involves Columbus East, Whiteland Community, Franklin Community, and New Palestine.
Yeah, that's a wide open sectional, I would say, and as I look at that, I think about Whiteland and the win they had over Mooresville a couple weeks ago. And it makes me wonder if they might be the team to beat there. If you can beat Mooresville, even though Mooresville's 4A, and we'll talk about them when their turn comes up here, but you know, for them to beat a team like Mooresville, I think, you know, says what they can do. They're always better. It seems like a good running team. They're always better this time of year, it seems like. And I think this Columbus East team is not, you know, their traditional power. They're a little bit down this year. And then you look at New Pal and Franklin. Franklin, you know, Chris Cole's got that team really playing well. You know, I know Akeem knows their star baseball player. He's making waves on the football field as well. Max Clark is doing a great job. And then New Pal, you know, they're always somebody to deal with in the tournament. You know, Kyle Ralph has that program going, obviously. And, you know, I see any of those, probably not Columbus East, but I'd say Whiteland, Franklin, and New Pal could potentially, any of those three, I think, could win that sectional.
It'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Shifting over to sectional 13, Terre Haute North Vigo at Indianapolis Cathedral. And then in the semifinals, you have Decatur Central, Terre Haute South, and then Plainfield playing the winner of that first game there. Akeem, let's start with you on this one. What do you make of this draw? Yeah,
like similar to what Kyle was saying earlier, I guess it's kind of the Cathedral bracket, so to say. Cathedral is, I had a chance to see them again this weekend, and the defense is still really good, still really fast, and that secondary still can just swarm to the ball. So when you can play like that, obviously they have a chance to beat anyone. But I'm interested to see if they can maybe establish a running game as the postseason progresses. That was the one weakness I would say they have is their running game. So I'm interested to see how they can get that going. But yeah, I'd expect them to advance pretty well in this bracket.
You know, when we talk about the, you know, having a week off, Cathedral actually doesn't. They're going to play that first round where most 5A teams are off that week. So I don't know that that's a bad thing. They'll play a team they should beat in Terre Haute North, and they get to stay home at least. So, you know, it could work in their advantage to kind of get back out there and play. But Decatur Central, they're looming out there. That's, you know, number 1 and 2 in the state, could meet in the sectional championship game. 3 years ago, Decatur beat Cathedral and then made it to the state championship game, lost to New Pal. And then the last 2 years, Cathedral has knocked off Decatur Central in the sectional. So I'm sure Decatur hoping Cathedral bumps back up to 6A and kind of clears a little bit of a path, you know, because, you know, it's tough. You know, you're the second best team in the state, and you might be done. You know, it's not even you know, very far along in the tournament. So I know Decatur's been in that situation before, and you know going into the season that's going to be the case. But still, you know, that's tough when you got to go up against them. But you know, never count out Javon Tracy in that group. I think Decatur will be somebody to be reckoned with in that championship game.
Speaking of Javon Tracy, Greg Doyle wrote a really nice piece on him last week, so we encourage you to check that out over on IndyStar.com. Shifting over to Sectional 12, that has McCutcheon and Zionsville playing in that first game. Harrison from West Lafayette will play the winner of that game, and then Anderson Kokomo in the other semifinal. Kyle, what do you make of this group?
Yeah, so this is our only local team here is Zionsville, and they're going to be I think, again, probably the team to beat. You know, they've kind of, you know, they had a wild game with Avon the other night, you know, over 1,100 yards. You know, talked about Krishan McCray earlier, but, man, that was a crazy game. But, you know, Zionsville's a team that they play predominantly a 6A schedule. So they're almost always playing teams kind of punching above their weight. So, you know, I think that helps them, you know, once you get to the tournament. And Zionsville's only 4-4 right now, but all those losses are to 6A schools. So, you know, they're going to be the team to beat here. You know, Harrison is a team, though, I think that, you know, could be potentially a team that could give them some trouble in 5A. They are ranked 3rd this week, and they're 7-1. So, you know, they beat Kokomo on Friday. So, you know, that's a team, you know, you talk about Cathedral, Decatur, and then Harrison's ranked 3rd. Zionsville's pretty far down the list. Rankings don't always matter. You know, records don't always matter. I still kind of like Zionsville to get through there.
With respect to the playoffs here, as we get in deeper into the season, deeper into the fall, as the weather starts to turn, how much do teams shift their play style and start relying on the run more? Is that as pronounced in your experiences out here in Indiana for both of you?
Yeah, I see that a lot. And then, you know, the teams that I cover a lot, like Center Grove, I mean, you see them, and this year's different, or these last 3 years really, with Taven Jackson. They throw more than they ever have because they have a talented guy at quarterback. So, you know, but you always do notice, I mean, they really start leaning on the running game more. I think a lot, you know, Cathedral's been that way. Most of the successful programs, you know, if you can run the ball, the old adage, you know, why bad things can happen when you throw it. I don't know what the exact adage was, but something like that. So, you know, so I do see that a lot more. And I think when the weather gets bad, you get a little bit more conservative anyway with your play calling. So, you know, that's a key. I think running the ball and stopping the run is always, if you can do those two things, you're going to have a lot of success.
Absolutely. Again, if you want to get involved with the conversation, you can do so on Facebook, on the IndyStar Facebook page, IndyStar.com for all of your coverage of this year's sectional playoffs all the way through the Dome, as well as pairings and brackets from all across the state. Let's shift down to 4A, and we'll start off with sectional number 23, South Dearborn, Madison, Consolidated, Martinsville, Silver Creek, Mooresville, Jennings County, Greenwood Community, and East Central, all packed into that 8-team sectional.
Yeah, so I think, Mooresville, I know we talked about Nick Patterson a lot this year, and I think Mooresville is going to be probably the team to beat there again. The team on the bottom there, they're not in our coverage area, but East Central, they go to Roncalli. They play Roncalli this week, so that'll be interesting to see, how good. They're always good, it seems like. They're always a team that's somebody to be reckoned with. So you could potentially see East Central and Mooresville in the second round. That would be a really good game. And then I think the top half, Martinsville's had a really good year. They got it handed to them pretty good by Mooresville, I know, this past week. But a team that's been on the rise here. But whoever comes out of that Mooresville East Central game, and I would probably give Mooresville the edge there. But that looks like a really good game in the second round of that sectional.
Absolutely. Akeem, speaking broadly, Akeem, with 4A, did you have anything that jumped out to you as you were looking through those brackets?
No, like Kyle was saying, though, I think, again, Nick Patterson has probably been one of my favorite players just to kind of watch him afar. So when you have a star talent like that in the postseason, when everything's kind of elevated, I think that's what I enjoy seeing is when the lights are at their brightest, like seeing the stars shine, that's something I always look forward to. So, yeah, to see Nick Patterson and what he can do, that's something I would look forward to.
Absolutely. Section number 22, Bishop CHATARD and Frankfort, CRISPUS ATTUCKS and Shortridge, Beech Grove and Lebanon, and Roncalli at Western. Those are your matchups there. Another one of those 8-team sectionals. Kyle, what do you think?
Well, the top and bottom teams there, the CHATARD and Roncalli, that was, I think everybody mentioned at the top from those schools were kind of like, all right, when are we going to see Roncalli? When are we going to see CHATARD? Well, it won't be till the championship game. But I know of those other schools, too. I was talking to some people at ATTUCKS when I was over there last week. And, you're hoping for a game where you can be competitive in that first round. And I think that's good. They get to play Shortridge, a game that was close when they played earlier this season. So, that's good. Beech Grove, Lebanon, I think another game that could be very competitive. Lebanon's, they're kind of maybe a sleeper. They've won 5 in a row, and they've been on a pretty good roll. Good skill position guys. And so that could be a team maybe give Roncalli a little bit of a tussle there in the second round. But, I don't know. That line, look at how big those guys are for Roncalli. I mean, that just looks like a college offensive line. And they played a close game with CHATARD earlier this year. I would think Akeem covered that game.
Yep, I was at that game.
Yeah, so maybe you can give us a preview of what's to come.
Yeah, no, the Roncalli definitely, they handled CHATARD well, but what I liked from CHATARD was they were able to run the ball with Tommy Hannon, their running back. But again, look at Roncalli's line. They're huge. So I guess it starts and ends at the line of scrimmage for both teams. And if that's the case, Roncalli has the advantage in that way. But no, CHATARD, this was several weeks ago, and they said they lost that game, but they're like, well, we're expecting to see Roncalli again. And so I'm sure they've always been on their mind, and they've been preparing to get to this point. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of motivation, obviously, heading into a rematch. But, yeah, it starts and finishes at the line of scrimmage, and it'll be hard when you have those big bodies at Roncalli to keep up with them.
The way that they were moving bodies in those highlight clips was just, it was a sight to behold. They're just moving like they're nothing.
Yeah.
And if you look at CHATARD, Akeem, I mean, ever since, they did lose that third week to Roncalli and then lost to Cathedral, but then they've won 4 in a row since then. Yeah. So, they kind of knew, early on, gosh, you got Brebeuf, you got Warren, Roncalli, and Cathedral. I mean, those are tough for a 3A program to play those teams, or 4A now, but 3A by enrollment. But, but then to rip off these last 4 wins, I think probably gives them some confidence now, like you said, going into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I talking to them after the game, I mean, yeah, they got off to a slow start, but they knew that their schedule was very daunting, and they weren't discouraged. I guess that's kind of what stood out the most to me, is just how positive they remained, even despite the slow start. And as you can see, it's paying off with the run they're on now. So, yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't count out CHATARD.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sectional 21, another 8-team. I like these bigger sectionals. Richmond at Shelbyville, Muncie Central at Connorsville, Pendleton Heights at Mount Vernon, Greenfield Central at Newcastle.
Yeah, Greenfield Central, big win. We can talk about this on Wednesday, but beat Delta on Friday night. First time they'd ever beat them, and that's
wow.
It's a long history between those teams. But Yeah, I would say Mount Vernon, realistically is the team to beat there. Good, veteran guys, Sloonaker at quarterback and LaBelle running back and linebacker. They're definitely a team to be reckoned with, I would say, going into the sectional. Greenfield Central and Pendleton Heights are probably the two others that you would look at to think that they might have a chance. But Mount Vernon last year under Mike Kirshner, who's now at Warren Central, they were 12-1, made it to the regional, and then lost to Roncalli in that regional game. The year before, they made it all the way to the semi-state, actually beat Roncalli, and then lost to Evansville Memorial. So, long way of saying they're used to being in big games. And I think with the guys they have coming back this year, that should serve them well, I think. A very winnable sectional. You're going to face some different styles of teams. Greenfield Central really likes to run. They're kind of in a phone book type of an offense, so it's a little bit kind of like Noblesville a little bit with what they do. So you're going to see some different styles in that group, but very clearly I think they're probably going to be the team to beat there.
Yeah, and I'd have to concur with Kyle, and I guess I'm going to contradict myself when I talked about how much I love running and controlling the line of scrimmage. Well, Mount Vernon has a great quarterback in Sloonaker, like I was saying. 17 touchdowns and just 1 interception. When you can control the ball like that and not make mistakes, you always have an advantage in that area. So, yeah, the passing attacks can get it done maybe in this bracket.
Again, if you want to get involved with the conversation, you can do so on the IndyStar Facebook for all the coverage, including Kyle's thoughts and takeaways from the brackets, which you can check out as soon as this show is over with. You can check that all out on IndyStar.com as well. You're watching IndyStar Preps Weekly live here on the IndyStar social channels. Gentlemen, let's move down to 3A, and we'll start with sectional number 29. Cardinal, Ritter, Crystal House, West Vigo, Tri-West Hendricks, Greencastle, Danville County, Indian Creek, and Washington. Kyle, your thoughts?
Yeah, so that'll be, just to mention, Crystal House at Manual, that's their the first time ever as this school being in a sectional, so that's cool for them. That's the former Manual, long time, obviously, Indianapolis school, but under their new leadership now, this is a new situation for them. So that's a neat thing for them to be playing in their first sectional game. And again, I would say this bracket probably worked out pretty well. You have Tri-West on one side, you have Danville on the other side, and some teams like Greencastle on the bottom there. Danville will get I think a pretty good battle from them. But man, this Danville team, they made it to the state championship game last year, and again they're 6-1, 7-1 now, going into their final game of the regular season after they beat Western Boone last week. So, I think those two pretty clearly, excuse me, are the two teams to beat. And I think it worked out well that they won't meet again until the championship game. Earlier this season, Danville beat Tri-West 14-7, and I think I can't remember. Akeem was at that game as well. Yep. So why don't you fill us in on what happened?
Yeah, so Danville won, but Tri-West was limited. The starting running back, Devon Brown, did not play, and Ethan Deppino has taken over the running back role there. He's playing two-way, a very talented linebacker, but yeah, it's kind of hard to judge when Tri-West is playing not at full strength, but obviously Danville is led by their quarterback, Cale Payne there. And that's another rivalry game if they were able to meet as the postseason progresses. That the atmosphere and again the emotion that can go into a rivalry game is elevated when you're in the postseason. So yeah, that's something that I would look for. That's a game that I would look forward to. But again, when Tri-West was a little shorthanded, it's hard to say. So if Devon Brown can come back, I would, their odds would definitely increase.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shifting over to sectional number 28, West Lafayette at Brebeuf Jesuit, Yorktown, North Montgomery, Hamilton Heights, Garin Catholic, and then Crawfordsville, Western Boone. Akeem, I'll let you take lead on this one and tell us what you think.
Yeah, I mean, Brebeuf stands out to me. I saw them last week or a couple days ago that they love to air it out there with Nolan Buckman at quarterback, and then Max Walter and Anthony Annie as well. So again, I'll contradict myself because when you can pass like that, you're always in games. You're never, no lead is ever too much. Even against Cathedral, they were bombing away and getting good long gains. So when you have an offense like that in West Lafayette, they actually have a Division I commit on their defensive line as well. So that'll be interesting to see how that passing attack can hold up against their pass rush. But yeah, I would say Brebeuf is definitely a team that stands out to me in this bracket.
And West Lafayette, they're 8-0. Ranked number 1. They haven't probably played overall the schedule that Brebeuf has, but they have a history of success. 2018 won the state championship. They like to air it out, traditionally, and it will test that Brebeuf defense. But I would say, Brebeuf's defense for a 3A team is one of the best I've seen. So, I think that that'll be a great game. I mean, that's got to be one of the top games of the first round. We talked about some of these brackets, Brian, being balanced. This one definitely not at the top there. That's when you get 2 of the top 3 teams in the state playing each other. That makes for kind of an unbalanced bracket. But there's also some good stories in this bracket. With Western Boone at the bottom there. They are the 3-time defending champs in 2A and moved up this year through the success factor and have an 18-game winning streak in the tournament. So they'll be putting that on the line. Should be able to get through Crawfordsville, and then Hamilton Heights, another team that's been better this year, and then Guerin Catholic. Is a team that is much better than its record shows. They're 1-7, but they played almost entirely teams that are bigger than them or ranked teams in other classes. So, that'll be a really good game in the first round as well. So, interesting to see. I would probably say Western Boone will come out of that bottom half of the bracket, and they probably benefit from having West Lafayette and Brebeuf play each other. So you only have to beat one of them, which will be hard enough to do. But at the same time, Western Boone seems like one of those teams that they're always playing their best this time of year. And can they do it in 3A is the question now. And they keep losing good classes, and they keep winning. So they're doing Justin Pelly at Western Boone doing something right, and they will go in 5-3. They play Lebanon this week in their finale, but I think probably better than their 5-3 record would indicate. But curious to see how they do in the tournament.
I'm curious, when these teams get bumped up classes due to the success factor, is it usually pretty seamless overall, or is there some growing pains for them as they adjust playing up a level?
It depends who it is. I would say the teams that have traditionally been good, like a CHATARD bumping up this year, Cathedral's been bumped up a couple times. Teams like that seem to keep rolling pretty good. You run into some of the smaller schools at times. You run into a situation where you have maybe one good class that carries you, and then you graduate everybody and you reload and you're playing up. So there's throughout multiple sports that happens. Not only football, but that's the tough thing about the success factor. And I think it'd be cool if you had like a rolling 4-year success or 6-year even, which. I wouldn't have to do it, so it's easy to sit here and say, what that would look like. But, in a perfect world, so maybe it's more of a traditional success than just a 2-year bump or whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely. As we hit the home stretch here with Class 2A, we remind you everything, all the coverage that you could want or need will be on IndyStar.com from Kyle, Akeem, and I. Let's go to 2A, and let's start off with section number 39. This one's a big one, as you see up there. Kyle, as you look at this, what stands out to you?
Well, our only local team in that group is Triton Central, and they have been kind of the class of that sectional here for a while. But they've lost a lot to graduation, and they're a little bit young this year. Triton Central, I would think still, even at 5-3, they beat Beech Grove last week. But I would think they're still the favorite. Probably Paoli may be the other team. And again, they would meet in the championship game. Paoli is 5-1 right now, so clearly they're a good team this year as well. But traditionally Triton Central's been the team to beat. I would probably, based on that, probably give them a slight advantage again. But they're young, and probably this will be the time to get them if you can get them, because they're going to be building here the next couple of years. Absolutely.
Let's jump over to sectional 38, because just in looking at your story, you mentioned Heritage Christian in that game against Cecina. That'll be a good one in sectional number 38. You also have Centerville, Eastern Hancock, Northeastern, Winchester Community.
Yeah, so Cecina and Heritage Christian, I think, will be, again, one of the best games that you'll see in the first round. Those teams met earlier this year. Heritage Christian got by them 20-14 in a good game. Cecina's been very good defensively, traditionally good defensively under Ott Hurl, who's been there for 30 years now. But that's a game that Heritage Christian's a team, I think, that, man, if they can get through Cecina, it kind of opens up for them to maybe go all the way to semi-state and maybe see a really good team there. But Linton Stockton probably would be the team maybe that they could see there, who's also state ranked. But it kind of opens up if you can get through that one. It looks pretty good potentially, but getting through that game is going to be pretty tough. And Cecina's ready. I think defensively they're really good this year.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, like I was saying, I mean, if this is kind of a contrasting styles there, because Heritage Christian, they love to run the ball with Colton Brown. I saw them play a couple weeks ago. 30 carries from him, 30-plus carries, over 200 yards rushing. And when you can have that physical factor there, that's, like you said, as the weather gets colder, I wouldn't want to tackle that kid if it was really cold. So, yeah, it's fortunate they're meeting so early, but it should be a great game.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sectional 37 is next on the list. South Vermilion, Lafayette Central Catholic, Southmont Cascade, Monrovia North Putnam, and Speedway at Seeger. Did I get all those names right?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It sounded good to me anyway. But, yeah, I think this is maybe one of the more wide open groups that, there's 3 teams. Monrovia, LCC, they're at the top. I think they're one of them. Then you got Monrovia there against North Putnam in the 3rd game. And then at the bottom there's Speedway against Seeger. I think those 3 teams, and they're all kind of, spread out from top to bottom. Monrovia Speedway would meet in the 2nd round, and Monrovia beat them on the last play of the game when they played each other this season. So, that could be a really good game to see again. And, Speedway coming off a tough loss to Lutheran, but Lutheran seems to be beating everybody, so nothing to hang your head about that. So Speedway hasn't won a sectional since 2010, so it's a chance for them to potentially break through. Shane Clampett there, doing a great job in his first year as coach, and they're starting to get it rolling. But this is a tough sectional. LCC, traditional power. Monrovia has been in the past has been a really good small school program. They haven't won a sectional in 5 years, so some really cool stories there in sectional 37.
Absolutely. Akeem?
No, not much to add there. Again, I appreciate seeing a wide open one where at least off the top of my head, that I couldn't predict that it could go. So it's always interesting to see from a fan standpoint, just trying to predict maybe for fun who do you think is going to advance. So yeah, that's a nice bracket there.
As the biggest Speedway fan on the dais, do you think that this is the year for the spark plugs?
Well, I mean, again, when Kyle visits practice, I give those teams like a ratings boost. So yeah, go Speedway.
Go Speedway. Let's move down to Class A, and we'll start there in sectional number 45. Indiana Deaf at Covenant Christian, Park Tudor Sheridan, and Edinburgh at Lutheran.
Yeah, so Lutheran, like I mentioned earlier, they have it rolling. I think this is probably definitely their sectional to win. But there are some other good stories. Edinburgh, being 500, potentially over 500 for the first time since 1993. So that's cool for them. It'll definitely end, I think, there for them because they got to play Lutheran. That's a really tough draw. And then you look at the game right above that. Park Tudor and Sheridan. Park Tudor's having a really good year, and they got another good win this past Friday, going up against Sheridan. Both those teams, I believe, 6-2 going into that game. So that should be one of the best games, I think, of the night in 1A. And then there at the top, you got Covenant Christian, who is the defending state champ, and they should be able to get to the championship game against Indiana Deaf and Tinley. Pretty good bracket or draw for them. So. There is some intrigue there, but again, Lutheran has kind of proven, I would say, at this point that they're the team to beat.
Akeem?
Yeah, no, like I said, there's a lot of talented teams. Again, like I was saying, Covenant Christian obviously has some pedigree and a lot of talent. Park Tudor just beat Covenant Christian by a touchdown. So, yeah, a lot of talent, and I can't call it. So that's always a good case, at least for me.
Absolutely. As we move on to the final section involving area teams at sectional 42, Clinton Prairie at Clinton Central, Traders Point Christian at North White, Frontier at Carroll, and then whoever gets through the semifinals from that first matchup will get Tri-County.
Yeah, and this is the only area team again for us in this one is Traders Point, which is they're kind of new to the tournament. They've only played, I think this is their 4th year in the sectional eligible team. But they could be the favorite. This is one of those wide open ones again, where you have a mix of mostly smaller public schools and then Traders Point's in there. So that's should be very balanced. Could go about any way, I would say. But Traders Point at 4-4 under Sam Carnes there. I think they've got a chance to win it, and that'd be a cool kind of stepping stone for their program to be able to get through this year. We just talked about Lutheran. I was meant to say too, they've been, kind of knocking on that door of trying to win a state championship. I wonder if this could be the year for them. They made it in 2019 to the state finals and lost, but they've kind of been knocking on that door. So maybe this is finally the year they can break through.
Absolutely, absolutely. Akeem, do you have any thoughts on that last A sectional?
No, again, like Kyle was saying, they have one of my favorite players in Montese Clay. So, again, superstars kind of control things. So, when you have, again, a quarterback that can run and pass, that's always an advantage. So,
in terms of the draw this year and how everything shaked out as we take a step back and look at things broadly, how does this bracket in terms of the matchups and the dramas of the intrigue compare to years past? Is this a little more exciting or a little bit less,
I always prefer the matchups like you would seed them. Like you'd have at least the top 2 teams on the other opposite side. So I always like it more when those teams play later. I know, some people like, that right out of the gate you have a 1 versus 2 or, 1 versus 3 or whatever. But, and some of that's fun too. I've covered a lot of games that have been like that and they've been fantastic atmospheres and everything. But I always like if you can, like you've kind of earned your right to play maybe an easier game first, and then kind of ease into it that way. So, I think this year worked out great. I mean, there are a few matchups you see right out of the gate that are really tough games, but, especially at those bigger classes that we talked about, most of those seem to be, where if you were to seed the top 2 teams, that's kind of how it came out in a lot of aspects. So I think that's the way I would prefer it.
Let's pause on that. And I know we've discussed this off air a lot, but just the idea of how we would rework the playoff system if we were to have that ability, and specifically with seeding. It seems like, just looking at it as an outsider, that seeding the top 2 teams and putting them on opposite sides of the bracket, and then figuring out who doesn't get the first round bye, who has to play against one of those teams right away, whatever. Seems like it'd be the best way to do it. I guess the question would be, how do you go about seeding? Would you use a PowerPoint system? How would you approach that?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the ultimate question. I think there are states who do it differently. When I was in Missouri, I remember they would basically put the coaches in a room and you'd have your they call it districts there, not sectional, but they would come out of the room and they'd have the thing seated, 1 through 6 or whatever the amount of teams was, and that's how they did it there. But and they've changed it over time. It's been tweaked, and there's point systems and things like that. But I think it's pretty easy. You could do it. Coaches do it, or the IHSAA or whoever could. You have a committee and pick the top 2 teams and put them on the opposite sides. To me, in football, especially when you have 4 teams in some of these brackets, it's really not that big a deal. Because you're probably going to play each other anyway. It's only 2 games. But for the 8-teamers, if you look at those, I think that would be maybe a bigger deal. And then in basketball, I think it would be, because those are bigger sectionals most of the time too. I would prefer that in basketball maybe more than football, but I do like the idea. I think you could do the 2-team and then still have like what we had today with the blind draw, which is traditional here, and if you're from here, that's kind of what you grew up with, the blind draw. So I think you could have the thing seated with the top 2. You wouldn't have to announce it until the draw came out. You could do your blind draw still for the other teams and then put it out the same way. But again, this is me, us sitting up here as sports writers saying it. But I think it seems doable to me. And there's been proposals kind of similar to this in the past from coaches associations. So, I think it is a possibility.
And it multiplies exponentially the importance of the regular season, because you don't want to be that team who's left to random chance. You want one of those top 2 seeds and, probably a bye or whatever it would be, just to avoid having to play. Let's say if you're in the same sectional as Center Grove, you have an opportunity to be on the opposite side of the bracket of them. Heck yeah, you want to win some more games, and there's a lot more significance, because as it is now, what's the point of the regular season? It's just tune-ups and chances for kids to get recruited. Just when it's completely random draw. Akeem, what are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, before I came to Indiana, I was in Massachusetts, and they had their own power rankings where strength to schedule and everything. There was a formula that came out with a number at the end that led to the seeding. I actually tried to do the formula one time. I'm sure my numbers were off, but yeah, it kind of legitimizes it in a way. It takes out some of the randomness, and you can kind of see who the best teams are and go from there. But again, selfishly, I just root for good games, and tradition is tradition. It's always kind of, people always want to upset the apple cart, but maybe this is this way for a reason, and it's how it's always been. So I don't have an idea to make it better, so I guess I can't complain.
Come up with one.
That's half the fun of this thing, is you just make it up on the fly. Right. That's how the pros do it.
Give me some paper and I'll jot something.
Clark has takes. We can sub him in if you want.
Yes.
Speaking of Clark, we want to thank Clark for his amazing graphic work. He put those things together on the fly, and they were beautiful. Shout out to Kyle for coming in and carrying this thing as well, and getting his story done right as we were getting ready to go on the air as well.
It was close. It was that close.
Got that thing done, threw on the tie, sat back down. We were worried that he was going to abandon us, and this would have been a dramatically different show. I probably would have just been cuddled under the desk crying. But yeah, you guys ready for this? You ready for the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I know it's kind of like when you get to the last week before the draw, you're just kind of like, waiting for it to come out. And, the last part of the regular season, maybe you're looking forward to what those matchups will be and kind of plot out the route for a Center Grove or what it's going to look like. So we pretty much know what it'll look like. But to see the actual matchups and what they'll be and some of those big games like, CHATARD and Roncalli down the road, and when those will happen now, we actually know. So that's the cool thing about it. Now, we'll await the results and cover them, and we'll be back here again to talk about it this week and what it looks like for Week 9. But yeah, this is really enjoy this time of year, and as always, look forward to seeing what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. We thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back Wednesday, which is when we will reveal how Akeem did in his picks. I know that's the talk of the town, at least it is around here. So we'll see if he made up any ground on Kyle in the old picks competition. We'll preview the final week of the regular season. We've made it, people. We're at the end here. But again, we thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back with you on Wednesday. For Clark, for Kyle, for Akeem, my name is Brian. We'll talk to you again in a couple days.